I think the steps that the community, especially the men of Mount Isa, have taken now to be putting their hands up as mentors and men in the community who want to build a better community around Mount Isa. They're taking giant steps to really improve everything that's in Mount Isa. It's young people, so young men can see that there is a good future now, where they didn't have anybody to look up to once upon a time, young boys, but now they can actually see that there are men in the community who they can look up to and say, I want to be like him. Where a lot of role models where we've had haven't had the same impact of what these men are doing. It's great what the Nukathari Men's Shed is actually doing for themselves as men in general, but also the wider Aboriginal community out in Mount Isa. I've been in Mount Isa for 3 years, so in the last probably 5 months or 6 months, it's actually gone from being a small step into a big, large step. And like I say, from little things, big things grow. And it's gone really ahead since then.
And you were saying how it's a real combination between, they're making things, the practical things, but they're also the conversations around the grief and loss situation.
Yeah,
and more about that and how that came about.
Well,
that seems pretty significant.
I guess it's the therapeutic side is the men's group, and having somebody to actually talk to and talk about issues that men face in the community. Grief and loss through suicide, grief and loss through a death in the family is really always hard to deal with. But these men have put their hand up, so we start talking about suicide. Suicide is not the answer, and that's the logo that we actually use for our men's group. And every time that we have a meeting, we always finish with suicide is not the answer. So we reinforce it all the time. And it's been a great, for these men to be able to say, we need to do something in our community, how do we stop the suicides? And we've got together and these men have put their hands up and said, we want to end suicide because it isn't something we want to see happening again. And it's had a really big impact too. I think it's changed the way how men and young boys, I think young men look at these older men now and say, they're doing really well. How can we do that in the future as well?
So how did it start? Because that's a big step, isn't it? It's a huge topic and a really hard topic to talk about, suicide. How did you get that group happening?
I actually came over one day and just introduced myself, and one of the men here actually just said, I've had 3 deaths. My nephews have died through suicide. They sat at my table. I didn't recognise any signs that they were going to do it. And it just started. I said, okay, let's have a grief and loss session through suicide. We started it. The first initial meeting we had was 34 men actually attended.
Wow, okay.
And we did an evaluation around, what do you think of, suicide a stigma, and it always has been. Suicide has been a stigma that men didn't want to talk about. The feedback I got was they didn't want to talk about it, so we brought it out in the open. And it just has rolled on from there with the march that we had of 150 people joining in the march through our suicide march.
And so that was through Mount Isa?
Yep, just in Mount Isa, through White Reef Association. We asked White Reef Association if we could be part of their organisation by doing a march. Initially, and we said there was so many suicides in the early part of the year that young Aboriginal men and women were dying through suicide, so the men just said we need to do something about it. We started talking, and then in May we had a big march. Men have been really the drivers in this community of seeing a reduction in suicide. We really have seen a reduction in suicide since.
It's a fantastic achievement, isn't it?
It has been, and I wouldn't say it's one man that's done everything. It's been a whole combined effort from everyone.
Yeah.
That all these men have really jumped on board suicide is not the answer.
Yes.
These men are gaining back their role as being leaders and being fathers and uncles in this community again, by being mentors as well. I know that their fathers are proud of them, their uncles are proud of what they've done, and they've actually said, my dad wants us to sign the shirts that we've had for our grief and loss, our suicide is not the answer march. He's so proud of his son. He said, he's so proud of his son playing a lead role now, that his sons can see him doing what he's doing.
And so they were shirts?
The shirts, we had shirts, we've got shirts made up for our march through, on the 23rd of May, and they had suicide is not the answer.
Yeah.
And his father wanted all the men to sign that who marched, because he was so proud of his son being a leader.
Story.
It actually is,
So he asked his son to get everybody's signature to put it on there. What a great act from him too.
And his father, that's why his father's so proud of this man.
Yeah. And you were saying that father was proud of his son and got everyone to sign the shirts. What do you reckon your dads or grandfathers or ancestors would be thinking about this group that's been held, and about what's happening? What would those men be thinking?
If those men could actually see Aboriginal men now, being empowered in their own community, I think they would be so proud of what all these men are doing. Their forefathers and fathers will be so proud of. Finally, now we've got men in this community who are doing the community, and the local Cockatoon people so proud. And it's just, our forefathers would be so happy to see that there are men who have said, we are going to be making a change for Mount Isa and for the good of Mount Isa.